We are live. We should be. It's that.
We've migrated,
Yeah.
lost all of our old documentation in Twitch. It's gone.
Welcome to the Rocket Bean podcast. Today we have special guest Vivek Udaykumar. Got that. Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Yeah, and Vivek is a friend of mine and a up and coming entrepreneur and super connector in the Boston area. I have been in a little bit of awe, and I've told you this, of your rise. I mean, you've only been out here for 10 months, give or take. You have volunteered and run a few different events pertaining to the startup community. One of them was a hackathon, or the Techstars Startup Weekend, which is basically a hackathon. That you ran recently at Wentworth University. It was fantastic. Thank you, Vivek, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure, as always.
And I love your background,
you ready for the interviews, the grilling that we're going to throw on you?
Oh,
okay, this is going to be like a casual conversation.
Yeah.
We're trying to get to know you better.
Yeah, you have 10 seconds to answer. Yeah, it's the hot seat. No, but what I really am really intrigued about you is, again, that you've been out here for just a few months. You've made some fantastic connections in the startup community. You're making a name for yourself. You're still a student at Northeastern, correct?
Yep.
Like, it's wild.
Northeast.
Yeah, this is all wild.
This is undergrad for you, right?
No, I'm getting my master's at Northeastern.
Okay. So what, like a first year grad student?
First year grad student.
Sick.
I don't think I'm as old as a first year grad student though.
Yeah, they come and go. I think they're all at different ranges. And you were not in the States until you came here. Is that right?
Yep. I am an international student on a student visa.
The
nice.
First time in the States. Wow. It's absolutely crazy. I'm like super impressed.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, some things I would love for you to share with the audience is kind of what drove you to get into the startup scene, and like what fuels your ambition to kind of deal with startups and entrepreneurialism, because it is a crazy world with a lot of crazy people. But yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and your story.
Yeah, I was I was involved with the startup space last year when I graduated college in India, where I worked for a company. We did similar things, so we hosted events for investors and founders, but I wasn't very involved. I worked there for a couple of months, and that's pretty much it. I didn't know I was going to do this in the U.S. But when I came here, I mean, it was so lonely because it was my first time seeing multicultural people.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I couldn't, because in India, I just had Indian friends, people that spoke with an accent. So when I came here, it's like you're meeting people from Brazil, from China, like from everywhere. And I was feeling lonely because people used to talk to themselves. They just had their own groups and everything at Northeastern. So I said, you know what, I'm just gonna go out for networking events, just talk to people, make friends. And so the first event I went to was in Newton, out of all the places in Boston.
At your lab share?
No. This was it was called LaSalle University or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think an entrepreneurship club hosted a event there. And I was there, and then that was my first entry. I took a bus from Jamaica Plain. I switched, But yeah, I mean, so I started going out to networking events just because I was trying to build my network. Because my plan originally was, let me build a network and then I could reach out to them in case I'm looking for a co-op or an internship. That was the only reason I went there. So I used to go there to ask people what they do, and I used to connect with them on LinkedIn, and that's it. Like people used to ask me, why did you come here? What's your objective? It's just to meet new people. Because I was an international student, they just expected that from me. And I used to go to 4 to 5 networking events every single week. So that's pretty much one every day.
That's wild.
From January to June. And then I started volunteering at Startup Boston, which John knows pretty well too. So I started hosting events through Startup Boston, volunteering at events, checking people in. like whatever it took for me for people to know who I was. So I used to check in people, I used to volunteer, and then get inside and talk to people, like whatever it took, to get my foot in the door. And then Boston is pretty interesting because if you go to 5 events, the sixth event you know somebody that you met at the past
Yeah,
at previous
we did
events.
that. Yeah, you and I did
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly.
That's crazy.
And then I did that for 6 months, like tirelessly, and then I built relationships with people. So I was like, hey, you know what? Instead of going to events, I want to try hosting events myself, because that was the next step. So pretty much whatever I've done is like, okay, I've done this so far. Let me do this better. Let me dream bigger and get. So yeah, I mean, after that, I started volunteering at Boston New Technology. I was their chief organizer of events. It was a volunteer position. So we started putting on events, 2 events per month. The first event I hosted that was my event was at Silicon Valley Bank. It was a consumer tech breakfast. It was a couple months ago.
And this was how long? Was like from the start of your
Like,
joining these startup events till like that day of your first event? How long was that?
That was 6 months. So this was probably in July
Okay.
or something.
so from
Yep.
January,
Um,
you started doing it. It built up
Yeah.
from going once in a while to doing it 4 or 5 times a week.
As a
yeah,
participant to
Yeah.
your own organizer. That's crazy. Yeah. It's a
yeah, yeah,
super
yeah,
fast track.
yeah. And then, bro, the thing is, people were very, very welcoming, and they wanted
Yeah.
to give you an opportunity, which was pretty rare in India, I would say.
Mm.
But here, people are so welcoming, and they. I mean, I'm very, very, very fortunate in a way because people believed in me, even when I was a nobody. Like I was just here, I was just curious, I was hungry, I was, I'm still hungry, but like,
You get some
you know what I
dinner.
mean? Like
Hell
I
yeah.
was just trying to get into the
Hell yeah.
ecosystem.
Yeah.
And then people took a chance on me, man. I mean, that was so heartwarming for me. That was so wholesome. And they let me put on events, even though I'm 21. They didn't expect that from a kid like that. But no, I
Yeah.
mean,
What was the turnout at your first event too? I mean,
Good
can't
question.
imagine like just thinking like the first time you try something like that and having only just networked for so long, like how do you know like who's this kid? How is he organizing such an event? Like did you get a big turnout or was it
yeah,
just like 20 people?
no. We had, I think, 80,
That's
85
pretty good.
people. I mean, one of the plans that I had was, I was one of their co-hosts, but I also co-hosted it with SVB. They
Mm,
had their own, newsletter, their own audience. They've been doing events for when they were born, basically.
hmm
Hmm.
So I partnered up with them, and I said, hey, you know what? Consumer tech is something that's underrepresented in Boston. I want to help bring that up. Do you know any consumer tech investors and founders? So they reached out to a couple of investors. So they had a panel, and then a panel followed by a networking event. Um, so I mean, they were our marketing community partners. So they helped bring a lot of people.
Nice.
And then I started promoting it on LinkedIn, and people. That's how I started. That's where people started reaching out to me. They're like, hey, I would love to attend your event and everything. So that was my first event. That was a consumer tech breakfast at SVB in July. And then I hosted one more. I co-hosted one more. It was a Boston hyphen Middle Eastern North African startup founders in the Boston area. That was at SVB too. That was my second event. At this point of time, I already knew a bunch of people, so I just sent out personal invites and had them there. And then yeah, they showed up for that event too. Uh, and I started hosting my own events from there on. So I hosted one at CIC. I also went at SVB again. A couple more events uh, at Microsoft Nerd, different venues like that.
That's okay. Nice.
But yeah,
One of the things that came to me is so just following your journey, you come to America, you're like, hey, you know what? There's a lot of stuff I can't and I don't know. Let's find out, see what I can do. And obviously, a lot of it came from what you said, like you were kind of lonely, you wanted to talk to people, and so you're starting networking, and you were at that point networking for trying to think ahead, trying to find positions and get connections, right?
yeah,
Like it sounded like that mindset changed after some point
it
of
did.
like just networking for the sake of networking. Like at what point were you like, hey, you know what? I'm not doing this for a job position. I'm doing this because I enjoy this startup life, this like connection, this community kind of life.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, this was probably in late March, April, when I was like, I'm meeting so many people, and I'm probably going to reach out to them for a job in August or September time-ish. So I didn't really have an ask. I was just there to be curious and ask people what they were building.
Yep.
I didn't have anything to sell. I didn't have anything to ask for help with. And I think that was when I was like, let me build a huge network.
Yeah.
Because people like talking, and I just started asking curious questions, and then kept them in touch. I grabbed coffee with people. I told them, hey, I'd love to hear you. I've met so many people in the past. I can maybe connect you with people if you want to talk to those kinds of guys. And that's what motivated them to talk to me. They were like, hey, I'm a founder. I'm looking for other founders in this area. Vivek, let's grab coffee. If you know people here, let's chat. So I started going out grabbing coffee with people like that, and then they knew somebody else that I didn't know, and they introduced me to those kinds of people. But that's how it started. And once I started throwing my events, again, just like I wanted to do something bigger.
Of course,
and that's where I started to thought about Startup Weekend. And then with Startup Weekend, I was kind of fortunate too, because I had an amazing, like really, really good organizing team.
Yeah.
John knows Marsh. Marsh is an amazing guy. He's bought, and so he's like
connected.
Yeah. And he's hosted Startup Weekends before too. So having that kind of guy on my team, and then Eileen, Steve, Vilkus, I mean, they're event organizers. They're the best kind of team you'd ever receive.
They've got this experience.
Yeah. So for Startup Weekend, we went on calls with investors. We went on call with startup founders. We went on call with mentors, sponsors, and that's when I really saw the whole landscape of people in Boston. Because Steve knew a lot of people, because he's an established guy. Marsh is, he's pretty awesome. So, and he knows a bunch of investors he introduced me to. And so that's how it started. And then I also started a podcast series too with VCs. So Marsh helped me introduce to Paul English, with Greg Ray's, Mike Nugent from Vestigo Event, like these kinds of people that I podcasted with. And I posted that on LinkedIn for the whole LinkedIn community to see. And that's how people started hearing my name. It's like, Paul English, what's he doing with this guy?
It's some random guy.
And then people started reposting it. Even the people that attended podcasts were Techstars guys or Mass Challenge people. And then I got invites from really, really good communities. Like there's a group called, I don't know if you know this, John, Larry, there's a group called the Foundation Group, which is Boston's under 35 who are killing it, who are crushing it, who are moving, shaking, founders, and like the best of the best of the best.
Oh yeah.
I could invite you guys into it too.
Oh, sick! That'd be cool.
Yeah. They meet once every month.
I'm a little over 35, but yeah, you can sneak me
Just you don't have to tell your age. It's fine. You're close.
You can still stop by at our events, But I started getting invited to those kinds of people, and then I started networking there, and they invited me to some of their own events. So I immersed myself into this kind of community. I didn't like, if you had have asked me in January, Vivek, like this would be like a dream. But that's how it is in America, I guess.
Yeah, and like that's kind of what really I think is special about your story is like, I mean, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, and it's something that I've noticed a lot, and I'm sure it's across every community, especially when dealing with startup, is when you go to these events, it's heavily occupied by people with agendas.
Yep.
Right. There's always some, and myself included, right? Like, and it's hard for me because I want to be a genuine person. I want to have genuine friendships. Like you and I made a genuine friendship out of this because we were just like laughing and joking at these events, and like it was, I wasn't selling anything to you, you weren't selling anything to me. When you go to these events, it's like 99% people with an idea or a startup, and they're looking for investors or they're looking for tech people to build their thing. Like it's always the same story over and over again. And I think it is very interesting that you went with no agenda, just genuine curiosity, and yeah,
Yeah,
that got accepted,
yeah,
right? Like,
exactly. And that's, I don't know, I think that's what people didn't see. Like, as you just mentioned, uh, talking to a person that has no agenda, that's just curious. That's what clicked, you know? But I
and you're
mean,
available to help. Like, you genuinely wanted to help. Like, that is one thing that really got me going on, like, especially with like Startup Boston Week and meeting people, is like, be ready to volunteer, right? Like, you walk into an
exactly.
event and they need somebody there to wash the door or to sell T-shirts or like do anything, like, do it, right? Like, don't do it expecting anything. Just do it to help.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
try to
like,
contribute.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's like just giving as much as I can.
yeah,
And then, yeah, it's good karma, right?
yeah, yeah. Oh, I
And
love it.
yeah, I used to volunteer. I used to like, yeah, I used to just ask hosts. If it was a paid event, I couldn't afford it because of student loans. I had to be careful. I used to just ask the host. I said, I could check people in and volunteer.
Yeah, yeah. Did that
And
to
then
you.
the host, yeah, and the host
Win-win.
was like, yeah, that's all right. We could give you a
Yeah.
free ticket.
Yeah.
Um,
You know
I,
what? Sorry, I don't want to cut you off,
go
but
ahead.
I curious is like, so you're a student, of course, which is, has its own, like management time and you have like studies and stuff, of course. But like, obviously, it sounds like you really want to be pursuing this kind of startup life, this hosting life or whatever, just being in the scene. How do you sustain something like this? Currently you're offering a lot, you're contributing so much of your time and effort and organizing things for other people. And just like from a financial point of view, is this something that you can continue to do for whatever time, or is this something like you're gonna have to pivot to like a 9 to 5 and then do this on your side? Is that like what you're thinking, or currently you're not even thinking about that yet?
Yeah, I mean, so when I started doing this, I was into investing money into things that would just gain me value in the future. So I used to spend money on, you know, like events. Like if I couldn't volunteer, I used to buy tickets or something like that. But I spent a lot of money. Like I'll give you an example. Most of my friends, they didn't purchase a Charlie card, like a monthly pass, which is like $90 a month.
Yeah,
They thought it
not
was
cheap.
really expensive, but I purchased that every single month out of my student loan.
Hmm.
Because like I used to travel so much and go to events, I just thought that it was a good investment to
Yep.
make.
Yep.
So that was like one little thing that my friends still ask me, like, why are you spending $90 a month?
And it also motivates you to go, right? Because you've already
Yeah,
spent
right.
this money. You're
Yeah,
like, now I have to get my value out of
yeah,
this. So like,
Yeah.
I
exactly.
might as well go. It's really smart.
Yeah. But like I had a deadline in mind. I was like, let me find an internship in September, so that that could get me paid, and I could start paying off my living expenses and sustain myself. But I mean, to answer your question, Larry, I mean, after I graduate, I probably would want to do this as a passion of mine too.
Mm.
So like, yeah, a 9 to 5 for the first few years, and then hosting one event per month or one event 2 months, because I want to be in the startup space. So I think it's good for me to meet people every now and then and see what's going on.
Yeah,
Um,
I see.
but yeah, probably something on the side. Um,
That's sounds a little too unfortunate. Like, ideally, this thing that you want to do
And you're
all this
good
time,
at.
you spend so much energy. Yeah, you're great at it. Apparently, it should be the thing that turns you into, sustaining you, right? Because you're contributing to a community that needs this kind of resource,
Yeah.
and somehow they will lose a great resource if you cannot be sustained.
yeah, that's true. I mean, there's always options to like for example, after I graduate, I could join Techstars,
Yeah.
and I could work for them and host events, or I could join Mass Challenge, or I could join these kinds of community organizations or accelerators or venture funds also. And then it's kind of similar, because
Hmm.
venture funds throw events all the time. Techstars does a bunch of events, but I can't do it my way. They have
Yeah.
a bunch of requirements. You got to do it their way.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
But
Startup
what's happening?
Weekend is just my baby. Like I did it because I wanted to do it my way.
So wait, was Techstars Startup Weekend something you conceived, or was that something that they had already going on and that you were put in charge of?
No. So Startup Weekend was, I mean, anybody can host a Startup Weekend,
Yeah.
but nobody started it in Boston post COVID. The last Startup Weekend we had was in 2018,
Mm.
2019, and that was a women's only Startup Weekend, and they
Mm.
had 30, 40 women show up. Um, which is the average for startup weekends,
We had
which I didn't know.
we had so
Yeah,
many.
yeah, we ran out
They were
of
just hungry to go.
Yeah. There was
yeah, and
48
then
pitches. 48 people just pitched.
What?
Right? Like that. I mean, I could have pitched, but I really didn't want to. Like, I wanted to join someone's team.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, there was.
But I mean, yeah, and the craziest part is I've never attended a startup weekend in my life.
Yeah.
And for me to organize a startup weekend, it was scary, but it was also exciting.
So, are you saying you've never done a hackathon either, or just a startup weekend?
I've never been to a hackathon in my life.
Okay.
Um,
I almost wish that they advertised it more as a hackathon than a startup weekend, which I get the difference. Like, I get what they're trying to do. They were trying to build companies where hackathons could be more about the product,
Yep.
and startup weekends more about
Yeah.
the company, right? Like, when you pitch, you have to pitch your projections, your target market, like a lot more aspects into it other than just the product and what pain point you're solving. So
Exactly.
I get that, but I think and I heard confusion, like, of like, is this because the structure is hackathon, right? Like, the actual structure of the
Exactly.
event is a hackathon. I think there was just a little bit of confusion, at least on my part, from there. But man, that was a good event. And
Yeah, I mean,
I told Marsh too, because he also runs the Angel Hack,
yep.
and I won the Angel Hack in like
Oh,
2017.
no way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey John, do you mind explaining how hackathons are run versus like some sort of a startup weekend thing?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So a group of people come together with various skill sets. It does not matter what your background is. Uh, People will get together. They'll have like a little orientation, a little introduction, obviously shouting out the sponsors, etc., etc. And then people will get up in front of everybody and pitch an idea, right? In this case, the one that Vivek put together was pitching company ideas. For general hackathons, it could just be product ideas. So you pitch, and then after all the pitching's done, you, in some form or fashion, and it can be done in various ways, you cultivate teams. And the size of the teams can vary based on what the organizers think. And the one that we just did, there was a team of 12 people. Like, there's one team that
Yeah.
had 12 people and another team that had 3 people, right? Like,
Yeah, it was.
it was wild. And then these teams have an amount of time to produce an outcome, right? In typical hackathons, you just want to produce an MVP, right? Like, that's the goal. I want to produce an MVP, generally live, right? Like, I usually do my prototypes, kind of using Figma and stuff like that, but they want something programmed, right?
Oh wow.
Yeah, and we did,
Yeah.
and we didn't show that, Vivek. Like, we had something. One of our people programmed an MVP, but my prototype,
Crazy.
yeah, my little prototype was a little bit flashier looking, so we opted
Yeah.
to use that.
Did you show it during the presentation or not?
I showed I showed the prototype.
You did, right?
Yeah. I did a little walkthrough. I did like about 7 screens. But Johnny,
Oh, that's right.
yeah, Johnny on our team, he built something like kind of like a survey type form, like on a live site. Yeah, so
Amazing.
so these teams have an amount of time to produce an outcome, and then that outcome is judged, right? So
And they already all these teams have the same amount of time, or
Yeah,
like, and
same
what's the
amount of
timeline?
so this is, and it varies. So I've been to certain hackathons that go all night, which is wild, and I love those hackathons.
24 hours. Oh,
24, or it
crap.
could be 48 hours, and like, you don't. Usually the ones where you stay overnight are 24 hours because they don't want to like kill these people. But
Yeah.
yeah, I love the ones where you like have to sleep over because like people are just caffeinated out of their minds, and like there's
Yeah.
zombies behind computers at like 6 in the morning and they haven't slept and they're just working away. I think I think it's great. And the one that we just did, I think it was, we worked till midnight or 9, stuff like that. I forgot what it was.
Yeah, 9, 10, 10
Yeah,
o'clock.
9 or 10 o'clock, and then we had to leave the facility and then come back the next day around 9 a.m. It went from, we had our orientation and our pitch night Friday night. We had all day Saturday, 9 to 9 on Saturday, and then 9 to 3. And then at 3 o'clock, pencils are down. And we had to email our pitch decks to Vivek, right? So
Oh wow.
if our pitch decks, and I'm sure you would have been lenient, or if you were, but like, within that window, or you're serious, and like, if your timestamp is at 3:01, then you're disqualified, right? Like, we did have a little bit of workaround because our pitch decks had to be sent to you in PDF form, which doesn't
A lot of teams,
yeah, which doesn't allow editing after the fact, which is smart,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But I did a little workaround because within my prototype I could link off to things. So
So you're admitting that you cheated?
yeah, I am. No. I'm admitting that we put together our links to our because we had to upload a video to YouTube and we didn't shoot the video until like right before. So and you can't really
I see.
you can't really put a video into a PDF, right? So, yeah, so we had to link it off from the
Like a
prototype.
hyperlink or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had our hyperlinks off of the prototype I built. But yeah, so then these teams work for however long they have to. They produce an outcome. The judges then deliberate over certain criteria, right? Like each hackathon has a different criteria, and they choose winners, right? So yeah, there were 3 winners, and our the one that you ran, and we got first place. Yeah, it was pretty wild.
Congrats.
I was
Amazing.
so happy.
Congratulations.
I was like, all right, we did really good.
Did you expect that, or did you like?
I expected top 3, if I'm being honest, right?
Okay.
I thought we had a really good, I loved Henry's idea. I thought it was great. That's why I went to him. I thought my prototype was great, and I thought the work that they did was fantastic. Like as far as the content on the pitch deck, I remember talking to Henry about like sprucing up the pitch deck because I love a good pitch deck, right? Like, I mean, yeah, Larry, you've seen mine, right? Right, like I love good visuals. I love clean, like I love designing, right? And Henry was like, no, this is like ours was probably the worst looking pitch deck because it was just plain white, like it was just there was nothing to it other than the content, right? And I think some like stock images that still had the Getty image on it, right? Like, but and I was telling Henry too. I was like, I'm getting a little deck envy from some of these because everybody else has had like decent looking pitch decks with like colors and graphics and whatnot. But the content that Henry and the team put together was top notch, right? Like that's what the judges were looking for. We had all our ducks in a row. We had custom, like Henry went out and got 4 people to actually buy into the product. We had technically 4 people that well, not investors, but like customers. We had 4 people that like gave a deposit on the product, right?
Yeah.
Which is validation, showing a sign of validation. So yeah, I was super happy with like the content on the deck, and then Henry's presentation, which was one of the reasons why I chose the team. Him and the other fellow that you said, Brian, fantastic presenters, right?
How big was your team total?
So as most hackathons do, we started off with like around 10, and then over the days, more and more people just dropped off. So
yeah,
I think we started off with 10 on Friday night. That turned into or probably like 12 on Friday night, and then that turned into like 9 or 8 Saturday, and then Sunday it was like 6 of us, something like that. So
wow, okay.
Yeah, we had a few people drop off from Saturday because again we spent half the day Saturday talking about what the product is, instead of like I don't know, like I told you, I wanted to do research, I wanted to do all these things, but we couldn't decide on like who our customer was, what we were actually gonna do. So
yeah.
I think a lot of people got frustrated with that.
Yeah. Vivek, I want to bring it back to you a little bit. You were the judge of this, or were you like you had a panel to specifically judge the pitches?
Yeah, we had 7 or 8 judges.
Okay.
To come in. So one was Jennifer Davis from Techstars, like just basically managing partners or people like that at VC funds.
Gregory Reyes.
And then Greg Reyes, Sean Broderick from SOSV Ventures. We had a few marketing experts there. But basically people that are high profile in the startup community in Boston show up. But yeah, I mean, I think that was a sell for, or that was a pitch when I pitched. I pitched the judges and I also pitched food, saying, hey, if you pay $45, you get like food for like 7 meals.
You sold me on that. Like I was like, hey, do you get any of this money if I buy this ticket? And you're like, no. I was like, where's it go? You're like, food. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I'll give you my money.
Yeah. Most of it went on food and merch. We ran out of merch so fast.
Sold merch too. Wow.
No. We like
T-shirts.
gave it away. So we bought.
You get a T-shirt, which is
But
I was about to say, imagine you like pitch people to come and sell your ideas, and then you also sell your own merch to them back.
Hell
no,
yeah.
no, no, no.
Double
That's a
dip. But
business capitalist.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a capitalist soon. Very
fair,
not now.
fair enough.
But
But
no,
yeah,
I mean,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry.
Oh no, I mean, I was about to say that startup weekend. I I attended Startup Boston Week, and so did John. I had 6 a.m. mornings from Monday to Friday, the week before Startup Weekend,
Hmm.
and then after that, the week after Startup Week, and then after Startup Week,
Yeah.
the next weekend was Startup Weekend. So I was ready mentally
Hmm.
Yeah.
because I probably didn't sleep more than 4 hours during Startup Weekend,
Yeah.
and yeah. But I guess it's just like passion to build
Yep.
communities,
Yep.
to bring people together is
Yep.
what stuck out.
Yeah. I agree.
Just thinking about incentives for participants, like you obviously, I mean, this specific event, the hackathon, was to try to pitch a thing and then connect to somebody who could then drive into like a future or some sort of potential. And I'm assuming that's why a lot of people would drop out, because they were like, hey, my thing doesn't work. I'm putting all this energy in it, and I don't believe that it's going to get to the end and not even have a shot, and so they'll just drop out. Like,
No, no, no. I mean, yeah. So when on Friday night, we also told that, hey, if your team wins, you get X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
So the winning teams receive 3 months of free co-working space at the CIC,
Mhm.
which is a game like
That's
they
that's
Almost paid, right?
it's like headquarters for Boston's innovation or Boston's startup.
yeah. And then you get direct interviews at Techstars. You just have to apply, and then you get direct interviews.
Yeah,
I think
you bypass the application process. I think you still, like you said, you
Nice.
still have to
you can still
apply.
apply,
You still apply.
but you're pretty much
Yeah.
guaranteed to.
You're already in,
Yeah,
yeah.
you get the interview.
Yeah, and then you get free pitch deck services from a
Yeah,
company called
Scroobius.
Scroobius,
Hmm.
which is a great like they help you make investor introductions. They help you build your pitch
Yeah.
deck, customer validation, MVP, proof of concept. They help you do that for free.
Yeah.
For the top three winning teams. So that was our selling point for people to stay and work on their idea.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Um,
and you guys did say too, like it's like I said, 48 people. I think it was 48 people went up
Yeah.
and pitched, right? And we then the whole community then voted on the top 13, and
Yep.
those were the 13 teams that people worked on.
Yeah,
But
I see.
yeah,
So it starts with team set.
yep. So it starts with pitching, and then we hone that down to like what's actually manageable.
Yeah.
But they did say like, hey, if your idea doesn't get chosen, stay, work on somebody else's
Yeah.
idea, make friends, work on a new skill. And they did say something that I didn't take or I didn't do was, and I do believe in it, but they're like, go outside of your comfort zone and work on and do something that isn't in your wheelhouse, right? So like me as a
Yeah.
designer, they're like they would suggest be a marketer, be a salesperson, be a programmer, like do something that isn't in your wheelhouse. I was like, nah, I got a Figma account that I pay for.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, you gotta take advantage of that money. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah. Yeah. That was I think I'm trying to figure out which day was the most intense for you guys. I think Saturday was the most
Saturday was,
intense.
yeah. For my team in particular, I think Saturday was.
Yeah.
I worked Saturday night. I had to come home because I had to take care of my dog. But I came home and I worked Saturday night on a lot of those screens and putting that prototype together. And when I showed it to Henry on Sunday morning, it made me feel good because he was like, "Oh my God, this is awesome! This is fantastic." So that made me feel good that I contributed, I did something for the team, and then he showed me like, or he showed the team like what else, like he was starting to bring everything together, and I was like, yeah, like Sunday was the funnest, right? Because we got to see
It was fun. Yeah.
we got to see all the pieces that everybody was working on start
Yeah,
being
like a
put,
final thing.
starting being put together. You start seeing the picture, still
Yep.
spitballing ideas of like things to do. The clock's running out, so we had to like get like Marsh came up and a couple other people, like there's mentors that like walk around and like
Yep.
mentor each team. So Marsh was telling us get customers, like get
Yeah.
somebody
Mhm.
to buy,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
send you money. So like we had to like scramble to do that. But it was still fun. Like Saturday was stressful just because we were trying to figure out what we were gonna do. I thought we were just spinning our wheels too much on it. So
Yeah.
and there was
Yeah.
there's like 10 people in there all and what you guys were saying too was really fun. I don't know if I agree with it totally, but they're like even because it was Henry's idea, and this goes for every team in there, Henry isn't the CEO. Like Henry wasn't the leader, even though generally when it's somebody's idea, they kind of do take that leadership role. Um, but they didn't. They were trying not to discourage people from expressing themselves and like putting ideas forward and like taking ownership of something that they wanted to do to contribute to the project, which I
Yeah.
completely support. But I also it is also my belief or whatever, like especially teams need structure, so there needs to be a leader. Then just there
True.
just needs to be someone that says this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like um
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so by Sunday, everybody that was behind Henry stayed and like, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And one thing so we also had the global Techstars team
yeah.
fly
Yeah.
in to Boston,
Whoa.
Yeah, from
and
all over. Yeah.
and they've never done that for any startup weekend
Yeah.
since
They're
2009.
awesome. At Katie and them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2009, so over a decade,
Yeah.
Yeah, and
almost two.
their startup weekends all around the world every month.
Yeah.
And this has never happened. And then they flew in, they stayed, they watched pitches, they supported people,
Hmm.
participants, and it was a beauty. And they've never seen 48 pitches
Yeah.
on Friday night. That was the most.
That was hard.
I was gonna say, given what I've seen from my experience as like an architect, and we have a lot of designers pitch their projects, right? Like a studio has like 10, 12 people. Everybody has to pitch their own ideas. It's all unique and individual. By the 6th or 7th, you're tired. You don't remember what the first ones were.
Yeah.
I can't imagine hit to 48. You're like, which one? Like, first, like if I'm a participant, right? Like I go there and I show up, I'm like, hey, which one do I join? I don't remember. I just look at whatever sticks, right? But then the problem is, like, I was about to ask this, like the ones that stick are interesting to me and probably interesting to everybody else. But then
Yeah.
you might miss out on really good ones that like are really good if you develop them over time, right? And then the other thing too, John, you were saying a lot of the teams are up like 10, 12. Some teams are 2.
Yeah.
Imagine a person who starts with a team of 2 on Friday. They're not gonna have any. They're not gonna finish.
Well, yes and no. So to what I was just talking about now, too many chefs in the kitchen slow up the process. So that 3-person team is a little bit more agile. So if they're focused, then they can go a lot
fair
faster
enough.
than our team if we're not infighting, but like, you know what I mean, like if we're
Yeah.
deciding. But yeah, a focused team of 12 is going to beat out a focused team of 3. But yeah, and what you're saying too, like remembering what people are saying, yeah, I was by 6, I was like,
There's no way.
so like the way I did it, I totally forgot ideas. Like I remember the not so what was it again? Not so simple journey or
Not so little adventure.
not so little adventure. I remember that one. That was one I remembered, and it was like a scavenger hunt around Boston to like
Okay.
I forgot the full pitch and but
Yeah.
and I remember, but what I started doing is like remembering faces. I was like, that person had a good idea. Like I remember, I don't remember Henry's idea exactly. I remember I liked it, right? So like when I went to go vote around, I wasn't looking at, because we had like these big sticky post-it things that people wrote their ideas on,
Yeah.
and then we had sticky notes. We had 3 sticky notes, and we had to go vote. Put 1 sticky note on your top 3 ideas.
Oh, this is to choose the top 13,
To
right?
choose the top 13,
Yep.
exactly. And again, I forgot 95% of the ideas themselves in context, right? Like in what they were. But I remember the people. Like when I looked at the person standing next to their sticky thing, I was like, I remember I liked your pitch. I liked how you pitched. I remember I liked something about it. And that's how I voted. But yeah, 48
Yeah.
could not.
I had to facilitate
It was
every single one of them.
that was
Yeah.
oh, and yeah, I loved it was so funny. Like I loved your, and I want
The
to
pitch
oh
thing.
my god, I love that so much. And if I ever do something like that, and I told you this too, I'm 100% stealing that. That was really good to kind of, because again, 48, kind of, it's hard to keep everybody's energy, right? Like,
Tension.
right? Like, you know what I mean? You can't ask to have it all the way up here, but like keep them here. So like Vivek put together something where at the start of everybody pitching, the whole crowd was like pitch, 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 pitch.
It's like a cult.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that happened 48 times. It was fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
You guys are committed.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
I
Very
was so
cool.
tired.
Because that is fun, right? Like,
Yeah.
and like you,
But the 47th and then the 48th time, you're like, I've done it so many times. I've forgotten.
to me,
Yeah.
I did it every single time because to me it was hyping up the person about the pitch. Because as
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
that has a little social anxiety and you
Yep.
know stage fright or
Yeah, I understand,
presentation, yeah. So like, I was doing it for them. Yeah, that was great. And then also your hype. You're like, let's go! Like
Yeah.
I wanted to know,
True host.
yeah, like he would drop the mic and just start screaming to like, like let's go, are you guys ready? Like,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
did you pick that up? Because I felt like when I was watching you do it, it felt like you seen it somewhere or somebody like I don't know you
Yeah. I actually learned it from a nonprofit that I worked for in
yeah
India. So they used to do things like that. So they used to just hype up the crowds. Like people used to say. So the nonprofit's name is ISEC. Um, and in my city now in India, it's like, "Hey ISEC!" They scream, and everybody says,
yeah
Ah.
"Oh!"
yeah
And then how? So it was like,
yeah.
it just changed everybody's mood because people were
Mhm.
shouting their voices out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you don't
But I mean,
yeah, if you don't get their attention, people are gonna get in their phones. People are gonna start
Mhm.
talking, and that was the other thing too. I was very happy that out of 48, I would say 45 or 46 of them, people kept quiet, right? Like with that many
Yeah.
yeah,
people, it was pretty quiet. We were all focused. There was a couple times where you heard a little bit of talking in the back, and everybody's like looking over, like, "What's up? Shut up!"
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
um, yeah. And then there was a
But
couple.
that was amazing, man.
Yeah, and there was a couple people that like stragglers. Oh man, when I seen them like walking to the stage while you were trying to close, you're like, "Thank you guys so much," and like, "What wonderful!" And then you're like looking to your left, and there's like two more people. You're like, "We got two more."
Let's go.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, if
Vivek,
you think, yeah, go ahead, Larry.
I wanted to ask, what's some of the challenges you face for trying to organize this stuff? I mean, obviously 48, you don't really anticipate having this many people, and of course organizing the whole thing itself. But as far as like specifically startups or hackathon kind of events, is like what are the challenges that you guys have to like face that might be different from like a general event?
Yeah, I mean, first is basically your team, the organizing team. So I
Mm.
had people reach out, um, saying that they were really, really interested, but it turns out that they were busy, they had other commitments, and they couldn't really commit. And one of the things that I didn't do is or I should have done, is have them say, "Hey, are you gonna commit more?"
Hmm.
Because we could, you're free, like free to leave. It's easier that way. So I could get somebody else on board and delegate the work. One of the problems that I had was it was just Steve Wilkes was your co-organizer, and me pre-event, pre-weekend doing all the work.
Oh yeah.
So, which was, and we had 5 people on the team, excluding Marsh and Eileen. So Marsh and Eileen were more about during the weekend people,
Hmm.
and they were also very helpful pre-weekend, during, and after. But we were more about logistics, Steve and I, and we had other people that weren't as involved. One thing that I learned is your team really matters because you have to
Of
like
course.
delegate work. So I should take care of social media posting, website design, like keeping up with mentors, judges, and
Yep.
sponsors, coordinating with the venue people, or like catering and stuff like that, and then making sure the budget is intact. So one of the things that I would do differently is just have people do like have one guy take care of catering,
Yeah.
Yeah.
one person take care of like sponsors and partners, have one person do lead mentors, stuff like that. So yeah, the problem basically is logistics,
Yep.
which is pretty ironic because I'm studying masters in project management.
Well,
I'm
yeah.
using that.
Have you thought about wedding planning?
Exactly. I mean, it's so with one-off events, like with networking events, it's
Hmm.
so much easier because hey, yeah, the venue's booked. Okay, 3 hours done. You order food. The food arrives half an hour before the event starts. You
Hmm.
come up, you just open it up, and you have plates, forks, silverware,
Right.
and that's it. You just wait for people to show up, and then you clear up.
Yep.
But this was a whole different level, because it's like for 3 days. It's
Hmm.
if you think about it, it's community building, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's watching you. Um,
Yeah,
but
you were the main guy. Like when everybody had a problem, they were emailing you.
yeah. And I didn't have answers to everybody's questions, but I made sure that I asked Marsh, people that hosted startup. And that's the thing, like I've never been to a startup weekend before, so most of the questions that teams were
Mm,
asking, I was like, I have no idea, bro.
That's
that's funny.
So
a learning experience. That's cool.
Yeah. So
yeah,
That's
it
really
is
sick.
7 o'clock.
Mhm.
If you
yeah.
gotta jump,
I could stay on. I
okay,
could stay
cool.
on. Yeah.
I got a few more questions I want to get to you about. Kind of circling all the way back. So I've been taking notes.
Yep.
But like talking about the beginning of your journey about finding events to go to and networking. I want to know
Mhm.
what tools and what sites or what methods you use to find these events, and then is there anything outside of LinkedIn that you use to kind of foster these connections that you're making?
Yeah, I mean, so two things. One, before, like when I just got started, I used to go to Startup Boston's calendar.
Yep.
You just go to startupboss.org/events. Um, there was, I think, InnoCrew
Yeah,
had a
yeah, yeah.
bunch of events on their website. I know CIC Venture Cafe had theirs every Thursday night. So I should ask people over there if they knew anybody,
Mm-hmm.
if they knew of any events. But now, if I was coming, if I'm a new international student now, I would just go to. So I have a friend that runs a company called Market Social, which is a TechStars portfolio company.
Who is it? Who's your
They're,
friend?
huh?
Who's your friend?
His name is Jonathan Chang. He is the CEO and co-founder, and he sends out weekly event lists
Mm.
that are happening in Boston to his followers on Market. I would just follow that religiously because
Mm.
if I was a new guy just starting if I was new to Boston, wanted to get myself immersed, I would just follow Market Social, download the app, you know, follow Jonathan Chang, and he sends events every Monday night for the whole week. And then he also has a spreadsheet,
Mm.
which I'd be happy to share with you guys, and potentially
Yeah,
the audience too.
definitely.
Like he has like October, all the events in October in a sheet, and he keeps populating them as and when he hears of new events. So for October, he has, I think, 20, 25 different events.
Hmm. That's sick.
Um, but yeah, in Boston, I think there's a New York thing too, but I'm focused mainly on Boston, and
Yeah.
everything in his site is everything that's going on in Boston, startup related, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
That there's also Startup Boston's calendar that
Yeah,
I'd highly
that's what I
recommend.
use.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so I also volunteer at Boston New Technology.
Yep.
So if you subscribe to their newsletter, they send you weekly events too.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, obviously, going to one and then getting to know a bunch of people. They'll start to introduce you. You'll start to
Exactly.
like slowly. It'll grow exponentially in how connected you get.
Yeah, you said it earlier. It's a really good feeling once you start going to these events a few times and then you see somebody you know.
Hmm.
Because again, as someone that like I have social anxiety, so like when I'm in these events and yeah, Vivek, you've seen me do it. Like when I get kind of like nervous or whatever, I'm like, all right, I'm peacing out. I'm out of here, right? Like I
Kind of
just
clam up a little.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
when my I get spent and I get nervous and I bounce, which is an
Yeah.
issue, and I've been working on them way better as the years go on. But yeah, it's such a great feeling when you see somebody there that you know because you
Hmm.
can go talk to them and you bounce around and you like it's really good.
yeah.
Another good sites would be Venture Fizz, right? Um,
Oh, for sure. VentureFest.
Vent-
Kate Klein.
yep,
Yeah.
amazing. Uh, then
What
yeah.
What else do you have? I mean,
I mean, I use
that's,
Startup Boston. That's usually my main one. The newsletter that Steph sends out, Venture Fizz as well.
yep, yep.
The Venture Cafe at the CIC is the number one event to go to, right? Like, I'm not saying
Yep.
it's the biggest. I'm just saying it's the best to go to,
Like the
especially
more
it's
regular.
more
Yeah.
regular and it's the
Mm.
best to go to, especially if you're new getting to this
Yep.
scene. Go there as many times as you can. I love that
Hmm.
they do the name tags with the numbers on them. The greatest idea I've ever seen in my life. So you go there and you have to like give your name or give some form of identification that you use the same time every time, and then you'll get this name tag that has a number on it. The number is how many times you've been to this event,
Oh yeah.
right? So that way, if I'm there with like a 1 or a 2 and I see somebody there with like an 80 or a 90,
Hmm.
like one, I know this person is connected and like they're serious about this life, right? And two, that person can look at me and be like, all right, this is somebody that needs help being introduced to this, community and whatnot.
Yep.
And like it's a good indicator and sign for both parties to like help each other out and know kind of the dynamics of like, where they're each at. But
Exactly.
yeah, I thought that was fantastic. Um
Yeah. I mean, I also had like social anxiety too when I was just starting to go out to events. But I think and I shouldn't have been, but I was way too hard on myself.
yeah, me too.
Looked at it as a very binary thing. I was like, did I talk to people like 10 people a day? I didn't, so let me go talk in the
Yeah.
next event. It's like I think I was just way too binary.
Mm.
Yeah.
Maybe that was a good thing.
It's a challenge. It's a nice way to get yourself to do it. I feel like
Yeah.
that it's a good strat. I don't know if it works for everybody, but I think it's a work strat.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
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 So
I'm sorry, Larry.
you
Yeah.
you ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So, kind of pivoting off of what we were just talking about, as far as tools that you've used to network to other people, do you personally? I know you mentioned you have a podcast that you do for Boston New Technology. Do you have a newsletter that you do? Like, what do you use to keep in touch or to like foster the connections that you've already made? And like, you're making more and more as you go. So like, it gets harder and harder to like give your time to one or two people and like really foster those relationships. So, what do you do?
Yeah, so classic. I just use LinkedIn, which
Mm.
is I gotta change. I have an
Yeah,
Instagram
it's
page
fine.
too. So on LinkedIn, it's Vivek Udaykumar. I post regular. If I'm hosting an event, I post it on there to all of my connections and followers. And then on Instagram, I have a page called Vix Mixers. So
Mm,
VICKS MIXERS.
Hmm. We'll
Um,
definitely drop some of your handles
yeah.
as when we
there you go.
post this.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So if I'm hosting events there, I usually post it on both of those platforms. And sometimes, I have Jonathan Chang from Market, promoted in his weekly uh, text message event list. I put it on Startup Boston's calendar too. Yeah, but usually primarily it's my LinkedIn.
I thought that
Hmm.
was interesting too, and I don't know if this is because I'm an old man or if it's like a cultural thing, but I found it interesting. Is is communicating through text something that's like normal? So like when we were doing the hackathon, you were communicating to us mainly through like mass text message,
Yep.
right? And like granted, the text message didn't have like everybody's phone number on it, so that was great. So like there was no like reply all or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but is that like a normal practice in India, or is that like a normal practice amongst people younger than me? Because usually for me, it's like email, right? Like,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. People. I mean, I've gone to conferences where people have their own app and everything.
mm,
Like for TechCrunch, they had their own app where they send like updates there, or they just do it through email. You're absolutely right.
yeah,
But I sent out mass texts to the participants through Market. So Market is the one that I was talking about earlier too.
hmm.
But they've been around this year, so that's why a lot of people haven't heard about them.
So,
So Market, you can host an event and you can mass text everybody that
so
signs up.
Jonathan Chang's company, Market Social, is what you use to communicate to us at the hackathon.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And people, bought tickets on Market too.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
if they, yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
it's that's it was so easy because you mentioned there was no reply to all or
Yeah,
something like. Yeah.
yeah. As an old man, sometimes like
Come on,
who's
man. You're
texting me?
Right? Like, ignore all these
You're gonna use all
numbers.
my anytime minutes. No, I'm just kidding. Um,
Does anybody else know what that is still? Like, you
Wait,
guys too young for that?
and
what's it again?
anytime minutes, yeah, it's
Anytime.
that's like a 20-year-old joke. Uh,
I'll just explain it because I
yeah.
don't want people to be confused. Basically, back when the cell phones were new and when texting was pretty new, you had to pay for every text. And like when you made calls, all those things were paid. Like they were charging you by the minute. And so when you bought a phone plan, you would have allotted, like, let's say 600 minutes for the month.
Mhm.
And like these would be like anytime during the day. But if you waited until like
Uh,
evenings or like weekends, then those were free minutes you can use to
So
communicate.
we used to
So
like
like,
wait until a certain time to actually
yeah.
communicate. Like you
wow.
couldn't talk to your friends until after 6 p.m.,
Hmm.
right? Especially at the end of the month. The struggle was real back in the day.
Such an
Wow.
old person problem.
That is. I have a hard hitting question. You can plead the fifth, but what do you think the Boston startup scene can do better?
Mm.
That's a good question.
Because I feel like one thing you
I'm
said earlier, I'm gonna give you some time to think about this while I rant. One
Mhm.
thing you said earlier, and I'm not saying that other communities or other places around the world have hostile communities, but it almost felt like you're saying that there's a little bit cutthroat to it, right? Like
hmm
there's so many people trying to come up, you know, I have to, I'm competing with Larry to get this
Yeah,
investor's attention. Whereas in Boston, I don't think it's that way. I think we're very communal and like we're very, um, we'll help each
Well,
but
other,
only
right? Like
but only the best can win,
that's
ever,
that's
right?
fair, but yeah, I don't know. I've never felt like a cutthroat community. But then
Mm.
again, I might not be as integrated to like get that. But Yeah, that's one thing I really like about the Boston startup community, that it doesn't feel hostile. Like, we have our flaws, and that is a question that I'm asking. Like, what flaws have you noticed that we can work on? Um,
As a startup community, you're
as
asking?
a startup
Mm.
community, right? Like, not necessarily as an ecosystem. Like we have plenty of resources. We have like the best schools in the world, right?
Yeah.
Like we have fantastic. We have really good venture capitalists in like financial services. We have
Yep.
really good institutions like Techstars and Mass Challenge, and other kind of hubs of institutions that help startups. But like the community itself, right? Like how we mingle, how we integrate, how we cross pollinate, which is definitely something a lot of the schools try to doing.
Yep.
Is there anything that you've noticed, anything at all,
Yeah.
that the Boston
I
startup community
mean,
could do better?
yeah, I think the Boston startups community could do this better and different too, is having like a good proportion of founders and investors in a room,
Yeah,
and not have founders go up and pitch directly after they meet an investor. Um, Having it be more, hey, you're an investor, okay, I'm a founder and I'm building this. Um, it's like just being as friendly as possible, because like I've been to events where founders just start like there's an investor in the middle of the room and then it's surrounded by founders.
yeah.
Mm.
Um, I feel like just be chill, man. I
I
mean,
I feel so bad. I remember. Do you know who David Chang is?
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So David Chang and Jeff Budaseg, Budate, I'm messing up his last name. I apologize. From Flybridge. Anyway, they were presenting at the TechCrunch event during the summer, and
Hmm.
as soon as Larry, as soon as they got off stage, right, and this is like on the fourth floor or something like that,
Like bees
down at the
downy.
Heinz convention, right? They got swarmed. They're
Yep.
making their way off, like off the the area with all the chairs and everything. They come out the room, still people getting in there, and like I'm watching all this, right? And I'm there to kind of network for this venture that we have, right? So like I
Yep.
don't need venture cap, like I don't need money, so there's really no need for me
Yep.
to talk to them. Um, I yeah, so they did that, right? Like they're getting swarmed. I then went and talked to Jason, our friend Jason from
Prepare for VC.
Prepare for VC and Oasis. So I'm talking to him, and then an hour goes by. They're still swarmed, they're trying to make
Jeez.
Larry. They're trying to make their way to the exit. They're trying to leave.
They're like celebrities and followed by
It was
paparazzi.
wild. Like, and then when I left, I'm going down the escalator. I see David Chang in front of me with two people still talking to him and pitching to him. We go out.
Pitching.
We're
God.
we're on was it Newberry Street or whatever that is? Like we're
Hmm.
out there, and like these people are still going, and David's just like,
Jeez.
my Uber cannot get here any sooner. And I genuinely felt bad. I'm like, and then in my mind, I'm like, how can I save this guy? Right? Like, I
Hmm.
can't go in there and like bully, you know what I mean? Like, what am I didn't know what I could
Yeah.
do, but I literally
Yeah.
felt
Yeah.
empathy for this guy. I was like, that sucks. Right?
Yeah, I think that could be done much better. I don't know how. That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know.
Um,
And to piggyback off of your thing too, like I really agree with you. There should be equal portions, founders to investors and founders to technical founders, right? Because I think that's one of
yep.
the biggest issues that is people like myself and other people that have ideas, whether they're good or bad, is up for debate. Um, but it's hard for us to find somebody that can actually build something for us, like build an MVP. Uh, and that's just by the numbers, right? There's always gonna be more people with ideas than there are gonna be people that can build them. Um,
Hmm.
but like, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
getting them together would be awesome.
yeah. I mean, so I'm doing my internship at this venture studio too, and one of the things that the founder did pre
Mm,
pre COVID is that he used to host events where there weren't like equal proportion of investors, politicians, state level people, and founders, but they had literally no name tags. There was no selling allowed. It was just friendly conversations, and even the sponsors that sponsored events, I mean, they didn't even have the chance to give it a shout out, saying, "Hey, we're
mm,
Insperity," or "Hey,"
Hmm.
they had no name tags. They had like no selling allowed. They just were allowed to come in, talk with
Talk.
people, connect, and then have follow up coffee chats later. And we're bringing that back.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Soon. Yeah.
I think I appreciate it because, you know, if you, in that specific scenario with David, if they didn't know him,
Yeah.
he would have no problem, right? And then he could actually then make genuine connections. I mean, that might be a solution, right? You tell the people that you have investors in your event. You don't tell them who.
Yeah.
I could pick David out of a lineup. Like I just know who he is through.
Right.
Like I've never
Obviously.
met him. Like I don't know him, but I know him through LinkedIn. I know him through just seeing him on panel talks. Like, yeah.
I mean, it's an idea, right? And you know, you might have a chance for new investors to come in without getting like that. That to me sounds like, if I was an investor, I would never go to these things.
Yeah.
I would hate it. Like I might find some gold in the sand or whatever, but if it takes me 2 hours of my time and I don't get anything out of it, and I'm like harassed the whole way, of course I wouldn't go. I would never become an investor.
It was pretty wild to see, and I've seen it plenty of times.
Yeah, I mean, investors could, turn it around because most investors were startup founders before.
Yeah.
But when they're talking to these startup founders, they could say, "Hey, I'm a founder. I sold my business, or maybe I exited. So tell me what you're facing. Tell me about your problem. I'll tell you what you need to focus on, or something like that." But not pitching them, "Hey, I'm an investor at this capital firm," or something like that. But
even using like even if it was like a product, like a virtual product where you can hear the investor's voice but you can't see their face or something, like giving some anonymity to the investor, right? Like so they can hear these pitches, talk to these people as people, right? Like I think that's something that's hard to capture unless the person is very confident, right? Like when I go to these things and like I'm trying to pitch again, I don't have a problem pitching my ideas. I can do it and I can do it fairly confident, but what I struggle with is meeting somebody in the scene that we're part of, and I'm trying to be genuine. I'm trying to be a genuine person that wants to make a genuine connection with you, but is very transparent that I have motives, right? And that's just what it is, right? Like, I don't know if I can really apologize for that, but like, I need something from you. I want something from you, right?
Yeah, it's good to have an agenda.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
But at the same time, I want to get to know you, right? Like that's how you're gonna make a lasting impression and make a genuine connection. It's like meeting someone on the human level. But yeah, like David, I don't know if those people see him as a human. They see him as a means to their end, right? Like, which is wild.
Sack of gold.
Yeah.
Or we could host an event on this website
if you wanna.
So we could have like a separate room for investors, separate room for founders, like something like that.
Yeah. When I talked to Marsh, if I can get Marsh in one of these things, I was gonna pitch him that.
Oh yeah.
Because like this platform really plays well to the hackathon platform, right? Like we could have sections, and I can make this office way bigger. I can make a ginormous office. Yeah, like something like this would play well, and then the investor could just turn off his camera or their
and if
their,
they need,
their
they just
camera.
leave.
Yeah.
Like my Uber's here.
Yeah. When we were at your hackathon the other weekend, and I seen Greg bring his daughter, I was like, he's out of here real quick after. He was, and I do not blame him whatsoever. Once we were done pitching, I was like going around shaking people's hand because again, I was so happy we won. I looked over and I seen him hitting the doors. I was like, yeah, that makes sense, my guy. Like, thank you.
Vivek, do you have any plans to kind of do not so much a hackathon startup thing, but I mean more of like a panel sort of style where older startup people who have gone through this grind, have done the thing, been successful or not, whatever, and then come and like kind of talk to younger people. So they're not like the investor position, but they're at least like, hey, come to my thing, learn a little bit, network, of course, and then leave from there.
That's exactly what I'm doing in my co-op right now. So every month, starting next month, we'll have 2 events, one in the first week of November, and the one in the last week or late November. And the last week of the month is going to be usually a big networking event.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a panel and then social, like evening social or social networking later after the panel. So on the panel, we're thinking of having 4 people. So basically 1 moderator and 3, other panelists, where it could be 1 investor and then 2 successful startup founders. And maybe in this case, let's say I can moderate asking questions. and then we could take Q&A, let's say from the audience, and they could ask questions, and then after that we'll have those people bring their friends to the event. So it's not just them being panelists and answering questions, but let's say somebody from, I don't know, Techstars comes, they're one of the panelists. They also bring the whole team together for that event. So it's not just them making all the conversations. It's about just about anybody in their team.
Yeah.
And that's a win-win for us. That's a win-win for the venue because they get a lot of people. It's a win-win for founders. It's a win-win for sponsors. So we're trying to make that happen. That's our plan now.
Vivek, do you ever want to start your own, not startup, but I don't know what this organization would be, right? Like the thing that you do, would you want to start your own? Like you're in the startup space, you might as well.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to start a startup right now though. Probably after like 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
So I want to get an investor point of view first. Like I want to work at a private equity or venture capital firm, see how people look at different industries. Because I believe like just because I like an industry doesn't mean I'm going to be successful at it. I'm going to pick an industry that's really good, that's doing well, that has all the, that's hot basically, and see which product is getting lots of traction.
Yeah.
And then, jump in that industry. But because things are going to look very different 5 or 6 years from now.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to work in the investment space and then potentially start something around community, building a big community of, I don't know, politicians or businessmen.
They don't need those.
Yeah.
Those guys are corrupt anyway. Whatever.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, Vivek is talking about a community of politicians themselves, or a community of people that are interested in politics.
No, like having influential people in the community and getting them access to, first-time people.
I see what you mean.
So like, it could be politicians, it could be business people, it could be investors, it could be nonprofit people, researchers from MIT, Harvard, things like that. And then, having people in Boston or New York, having them join that community too, and then hosting monthly socials.
Super cool.
Yeah.
And then maybe 1 year later, once we have 1,000 people, let's say I charge them a membership fee or something like that.
Yeah. That is on the rise. Like there's was it Hunt? No, Hunt is.
Oh, the Hunt Club. Club. David Cheng's.
David Cheng's. Yep. Shout out to David again. And then there's another one. I forget the name of it. It's like the Hamptons or something like that. It's out in New York. It's another exclusive club for founders, but like you have to hit like a certain criteria, right? Like you don't have to be like, an exited or anything like that, but you have to be.
No, I mean it doesn't only have to be for founders, bro. It could be like for international students like myself that are just entering the U.S. That don't know who to talk to professionally.
Yeah.
They could pay, let's say, $10 a month or something like that, and then join the community. Or if they're a student, they get a discount or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they join that community, and then they get to attend our events.
Yeah.
So, it's just an idea I've had.
No, I'm with it. I mean, Larry and I have been we're definitely on the train of building communities.
Yeah. It's a struggle, but you know what? I know we've had you for almost more than an hour now. I kind of have a closing question for you.
Go ahead, bro.
What's your end goal? This is, I mean, obviously you might not have it even in mind, but like to me, a startup is just the first step, right? And everybody's constantly taking these first steps, but you can only do that for so long. You have to eventually end somewhere that's sustainable for yourself.
Yeah. So my end goal is to be in private equity.
Okay.
So for me to understand private equity, I need to understand how startups work and how businesses work.
I see.
Like in technically and also, in real world, practically too. So that's why I'm meeting founders, understanding how their businesses work. And I'm also, meeting private equity folks with VC investors to see how they think of how businesses work in usual. So, so my end goal is to be in private equity on the deal side. So I'm, buying businesses, restructuring them, being known for M&A and valuations.
Yep.
That's like the long-term goal I have. So that's my end goal. So I want to do that full time, but also host startup events on the side too.
You're going to be that guy swarmed at every one of those events you host.
I'm going to laugh so hard. It's going to be so funny.
We're going to be standing on the side like, It'll be 2 hours before he gets out that door. That's 2
I'm
feet
gonna
from
be in the
him.
background. I'm like, I'm selling his phone number. Anybody?
One of the things that I did at events where I was like really important, and people didn't know who I was.
Mhm.
And people asked me, "What do you do?" I said, "Oh, I work for UPS, or I work for."
Nice.
So awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice,
And
nice.
they believed it. And I'm like,
I'm actually here for
yeah,
Uber Eats. I just figured I'd
Yeah.
stay.
yeah, I deliver food or something like that. And they asked me, "What are you doing here then?" I said, "Oh yeah, my friend's hosting this event, so I came here to
That's
support him."
nice.
Nice.
But
So
that's
who really
usually,
knows you? Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, my
But
guy,
I would-
I really appreciate you you doing this.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming and
No,
joining
thank
us.
Yeah, yeah.
so
We'll
much for
definitely have you
having
back
me.
on. This was fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank
Vivek.
you, my
Thank
guy.
you.
Thank you,
Good
everybody.
night. See you.
Night.
Bye.
Do you leave now, or are you gonna?
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
quit.
I'm gonna. Yeah.
Bye, guys. I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
See ya.